the Peace Prize of the German Book Trade 2012, The Power of the Written Word. The interview with writer and Peace Prize winner Liao Yiwu.
Liao Yiwu, you've been awarded the Peace Prize of the German Book Trade. This is one of the most important prizes in German culture. What does it mean for you personally and for other underground writers in China?
Above all, this prize provides an opportunity. I've heard that if an author wins this prize, they can expect very good book sales. My new book, The Bullet and Opium, is just out now, and it deals with the memory of the crushing of the democratic movement in China in 1989. Thanks to this Peace Prize, many people will read my book. My goal in writing it is to remind as many people as possible about what happened on the 4th of June.
Why is this subject still so important after all these years?
A number of curious things have happened just this year. I'll give you two examples. Someone related to one of the victims of the government suppression in 1989 hung himself in despair. Then Chinese authorities made it look like another man had hung himself too. That was Li Wangyang, who spent a long time in prison because of his involvement in the 1989 protests. And this very year, a number of people have commented on the events of June 4th. Former German Chancellor Helmut Schmidt came out and said that the massacre was justified. It's enough to drive you to despair. That's exactly why I believe the publication of this book is so timely.
The Bullet and the Opium is an unusual title for a book. If I've understood it correctly, it describes the power system within the Communist Party. The bullet represents violence against those who think differently, and opium stands for the economic boom and money, which are keeping people quiet for now. How long can this kind of power system continue?
If I were to write a book about the Mao era, I'd call it The Bullet and the Clip Around the Ear. Mao shot bullets at his opponents and clipped everyone else around the ear. Deng Xiaoping introduced a new policy. He replaced clips around the ear with a kind of drug, material wealth. It worked perfectly. That system is still in place today. Former Chancellor Schmidt's remark shows that the drug has worked on him too. He could work as an author in China without any problems. Just look at the Frankfurt Book Fair in 2009. That was also full of writers who seemed oblivious of China. Schmidt has gone one step further now. That's why he'd get on just fine as a writer in China.
A German philosopher, Johann Gottfried Herder, described home as the place where you don't have to explain yourself. How do you define it?
My father used to teach Chinese classics. When I was a child, he told me a lot about classical literature. And I really immersed myself in books like I Ching, the Book of Changes, which is also used as the basis for fortune-telling. I also read Shi Ji, the first book of Chinese history. That's how I can tell the future and why I can compare the present with the past. It doesn't matter where I am in the world. As long as I have books like these, I feel at home. Beyond that, I live in Berlin, where there are frequent reminders of the Nazi era or former East Germany. That constantly reminds me of the existence of dictatorships, and particularly what happened here in 1989. Massive changes took place in that year in Germany and in China.
You view yourself primarily as a chronicler of your country. Now that you're in exile, you're cut off from your heritage and your native language too. How can you continue to work like that?
I lived in China for 53 years. During that time, I experienced a great deal, heard many stories, and gathered a lot of material. It's all stored in my head. I also made a lot of sound recordings. That gives me more than enough material through to the end of my life. I've already lived most of my life. In contrast, the expatriates who went abroad after 1989 were still young people in puberty. I wrote most of the book, The Bullet and Opium, in China.
In the foreword to your book, For a Song and 100 Songs, you wrote about how Chinese police and state security officials repeatedly searched your apartment and seized your manuscripts. This is followed by the sentence where you say you were forced to dig more and more holes in order to hide your material and your manuscripts. Does the new book come from this kind of hiding place?
Well, the book entitled For a Song and 100 Songs was written in the 1990s. The Tiananmen Square massacre was more recent then, so the monitoring by the state was much tougher. Their methods were more primitive. There were no computers. There was no internet. My interview partners are mostly forgotten. They're on the edge of society and aren't as closely monitored anymore. As long as you're careful, these kinds of interviews are much easier nowadays.
If we look at the list of your public appearances, it's striking that you often appear with the German Nobel Prize winner for literature, Herta Müller. Is there a kind of bond between two people who both experienced how a dictatorship can deform people?
Even when I was living in China, I read the works of Herta Müller. The last thing I read of hers was a 2009 article in the newspaper Die Zeit about how the old Romanian secret police are still at work. The article was circulated on the internet in China. It was also online where I saw the film The Lives of Others, illegally, since it was banned in China. It was a bizarre experience. In her article, Herta describes how the secret police monitored her. She describes how the Stasi recruited her best friend to spy on her, and how Müller was devastated when she found out. These kinds of stories are commonplace in China, but Herta Müller described it very well. Her experiences and mine are very similar.
You gave the opening speech at the International Literature Festival in Berlin in early September. And you'd originally planned to invite the Karmapa, the third highest Lama in Tibetan Buddhism, to appear with you at the opening ceremony. Why?
The reason for that was the wave of self-immolations in Tibet. Since then, more than 50 Tibetans have set fire to themselves. I know of no other nation where so many people have burned themselves. That's why we thought of the designated successor to the Dalai Lama, the Karmapa. The Karmapa is first and foremost an excellent musician. His music speaks to the Buddhist traditions of reincarnation and karma. If Tibetans could see someone like the Karmapa on the world stage, then I think the wave of self-immolations would gradually die down. He would be a young and attractive icon for Tibetans to look up to. I think that the Karmapa can lead the 6 million Tibetans out of their misery in the future.
Most Chinese writers I know all have long hair and a beard. But you're the complete opposite. Is there a reason for that?
The other writers were probably never in prison, but I was there for years, where my hair was shaved off. And as I grew older, I had less and less hair. So I just got used to it this way. It's also more hygienic and more practical. When you wash your face, you can wash your head as well.
But you didn't just have your head shaved in prison. You were tortured. You repeatedly tried to commit suicide. In your new book, I read the sentence, "Once prison is inside you, you can never be free." Do you feel free today?
At the moment, all I can say is it's a long process. You can only feel free when you bare your heart in your writing and dedicate yourself to the freedom of others.
Liao Yiwu, many thanks for your time and your insights.
Bitte schön.